This week, VP of Product Strategy at STEALTHbits, Mr. Gabriel Gumbs, joins us for a conversation about Active Directory security, or insecurity, as it were. In the enterprise new, we've got Duo, SkyHigh, CyberArk, Ping, Secure by Default may not be what you think, and Demisto. Stay tuned for all that and more on this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly.
I'm a tiger. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly. I don't know how this is going to go because Paul's not here this week, but we're just going to give it a shot.
Even if you've got experience in security, you can benefit from going to somewhere and learning about that bug again. Wearing my tactical turtleneck just for Mr. John Strand, who is on the lines via Skype. John, welcome to the program.
I'm wearing the tactical fleece as well, Paul. This is Excellent. A fully, completely, and utterly tactical show.
Are you an enterprise dissatisfied with overpriced analytics software that can't keep up with modern data? If so, then GravWell is the solution for you. GravWell is an unstructured data analytics platform for enterprises who demand total data visibility across their network. GravWell lets your security team go beyond the SIM and fuse data sources to correlate and answer questions you didn't know needed to be asked. Go to gravwell.io/Security Weekly for an unlimited data trial and gain uncompromising visibility today. Improve the efficiency and effectiveness of your security operations with DF Labs security orchestration, automation, and response technology. Automate threat containment, orchestrate incident response, and measure operational performance with DF Labs in-command SOAR platform. Leverage your current security resources to minimize incident resolution time, maximize analyst efficiency, increase the number of incidents handled, and reduce overall risk. In-command SOAR acts as a force multiplier, enabling your security team to do more with less. Streamline the full incident response lifecycle automation process today. Keep your cybersecurity incidents under control with DF Labs. Visit dflabs.com/Security Weekly and request to see in-command SOAR live in action. Stop attackers from domain credential theft and lateral movement with a 99% success rate by using artificial intelligence to control the attacker's perception of the environment. Javelin Networks is the world's first endpoint intrusion containment platform to protect domain networks. Javelin detects targeted attacks and breaches by obfuscating Active Directory, domain controllers, domain identities, domain credentials, and all domain resources. It only takes one compromised machine to jeopardize the entire organization. Don't be a victim. Visit javelin-networks.com and request a demo of AD Protect today. Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customer sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live. Welcome, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly, episode 97. It is June 27th, 2018. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian. I'm here in G-Unit Studios with our guest for today, Gabriel Gumbs from STEALTHbits Technologies, who flew up just to do the shows today, which is awesome. Love having people in studio.
Could not pass up the opportunity.
It's great. It's great.
The Northeast, baby.
Well, welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly. Of course, on the lines via Skype, Mr. John Strand is here with us. John, welcome.
Happy to be here. Just dealing with the sense of impending doom and dread that is sinking in because I'm going to be at DEF CON this year. I'm trying to
I was going to say, like, you having an audit or something?
Well, I'm trying to limber up. I'm drinking lots and lots of fluids to make sure that I got proper displacement for the alcohol that's going to be consumed. And periodically just hitting myself in the head with a 2x4 so that I can make it through all the vendor booths at Black Hat. So I'm getting ready, folks. I'm getting ready.
It's going to be awesome. Yeah, we're going to have presence in the pool area at both Mandalay Bay and Caesars.
Really?
Which will be kind of interesting. John was like, hey, where's the party? I'm like, well, there's not really an official party, but we're in the pool area at Mandalay Bay and Caesars.
As I will be there this year also.
Yes, so. We are, and we're Security Weekly, so, put that combination together and just imagine what the possibilities could be.
I like where this is going. I will be sure to stop by.
Yes. I'm bringing my bathing suit. That's all I'm saying.
Tactical bathing suit?
No, tactical bathing suit, yes.
They have to be tight, otherwise they're snags.
And we got lots of help this year too. I think last year trying to cover the Black Hat floor just by myself was just terrible experience. Yeah. So now I've got other people that are going to be doing it. I'm going to be swimming in the pool. No, I'm still going to be working while I'm out there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you check us out if you're attending either of those two conferences. That's pretty much it for announcements. I want to just jump into it. Active Directory security is the topic. What I found interesting, and John and Gabriel both, I want to get your take on this. Gabriel, you said something interesting right before we started recording. You said executives for organizations, maybe in security, maybe not, but senior executives starting to ask questions more and more about Active Directory security. John, are you seeing this?
Yeah, Active Directory, I'm more convinced now than I've ever been before that Active Directory is nothing but a hacker superhighway. Mm-hmm. There are features in Active Directory. I'm like, what possible human being would ever do this, like for a legitimate business reason, other than trying to take over the entire environment? Like curb roasting is a great example.
Mm-hmm.
I think the concern used to be patching. I think it still is patching, right? But as we kind of peel back the layers of the onion, there's a lot more that, like the fixes aren't necessarily patches, which makes it difficult to fix, right?
Let's have a look at, let's break down AD, if you would. Unlike a lot of other parts of your IT infrastructure, when you upgrade your domain controllers, and folks do that however often, you might be in 2012, you might be in 2016. So you might be
as least often as possible.
Right, as least, which, Christ, I've seen that too. Right. I mean, I've literally encountered some, from 15 years ago. But the structure inside of AD usually doesn't change for these organizations, right? Whoever had access to something was granted access. It's still there. So, patch and upgrade all you want. The actual, the delegation of access and the structuring of the groups, et cetera, all those things exist because as time goes on, we just keep piling on top of it. And no one, well, for the most part, no one goes back and investigates those things until it becomes an issue. And then the second part of it really is, by design, Active Directory is, promiscuous. Any authenticated user can ask it any question and get an answer, right? I mean, by design, it will tell you all of the things.
Right. Insecure by design is what some would say.
Right. Yeah. So it is. I love calling it a hacker's. What would you call it? Superhighway.
Yeah, it's a hacker superhighway.
I'm totally going to borrow that from now on. I'll throw a nickel in the pot every time I use it. But
there you go.
But definitely, because it's true.
And also, like, some very specific examples of that, like group policy preference files. You can patch that, right? But if you have insecure group policy preference files with passwords in them or obfuscated passwords that can be easily reversed, it didn't fix those. It didn't make those go away. It just stopped that problem from going forward. So you have this like snowball of crap that keeps rolling every year and getting bigger with Active Directory.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're right. And I think there are a lot of instances where you can fix a security problem moving forward. But the more difficult part is sometimes going back and fixing the things that are already there because you only fixed it moving forward.
Right.
I think landman passwords were one of those things as well.
It just kept going.
It just like the cruft just it is insecure by design, but it wants to stay insecure.
It's fighting it, right? It's fighting us.
Well, it's scary to think about it like that.
Landman passwords went away, but NTLM hashes aren't going anywhere, right? And so admins logging into desktops and leaving those behind, that's not going away. Right. And we all know how easy it is to gain access to a desktop. I mean, from drive-by web attacks to phishing, whatever it is, it's easy access for me as an attack from the outside to get onto at least one desktop. It's not difficult. And so insecure by design is definitely one of the best ways to put it. And like if you look at two of the last attacks the Mimikatz tool that I'm sure lots of folks, if you're not familiar with, from Active Directory security standpoint, used to audit AD security. The last two attacks that Benjamin rolled out, what did we have? We had DC Sync, DC Shadow. There's no patch against those things, right? That's just abuse of native functionality. Those are the scariest attacks for us as defenders, because there's no way to just be like, okay, we'll go change this setting, we'll go patch this thing, we'll put this thing in front of it. You don't get to do that. There are some ways that you can mitigate those attacks now. I mean, shameless plug. We have our own defenses against those types of things, right? We can stop those types of things, but that means you have to implement that control. You don't just turn to Microsoft and say, "Hey, Microsoft, you got a patch for me on that?" Because there's no way to patch that.
Well, I'm sure you just don't just turn to StealthBits and say, "Oh, drop it in," and like it's a button that I just flip a switch, right? There's some
almost,
work, but there's still some work.
There is definitely still some work. Yes, yeah. No two ways about it. Because even if you do that, it's like you still haven't solved a lot of the other problems. Like, all right, so who has overly permissive access? And my personal favorite is like the Bloodhound tool. I love that tool, right? Because again, it's doing nothing terribly nefarious, if you would. It performs a bunch of LDAP queries. It asks Active Directory who has access to what, and then it maps a path all the way to domain access, right? To domain level access. It's like, well, that's just gnarly. And all it did was just simply look at the way your permissions are being laid out in AD and maps a path all the way to the top. That's there's no getting around that.
So, John, in the more difficult pen test that you have, what are some of the things that they're doing within Active Directory that make it more difficult for you?
I would say that there's a couple of different things. One, if they've actually audited their environment before we actually got there, they are very familiar with a lot of these Active Directory style attacks that exist, and they've kind of cleaned up before we got there. And in fact, Paul, if you remember a couple of years ago, we should revisit this. We did pen test preparations webcasts.
Yes.
Where we walked through and we said, here's what we're going to do, and here's the things you can do to stop us. So please do those things to stop us before we get there. So that helps out a lot. Another thing that works fantastic is easy. Just enable your host-based firewalls. So I can't use Death Star or Bloodhound to move laterally in your environment. User behavioral analytics makes a big deal, makes a big impact if people are using it correctly. And I think that that's a hard thing, is a lot of these recommendations that we make, it takes a tremendous amount of time to implement effectively for some of them. Some of them are easy. They're not that hard. Like Windows host-based firewalls at the workstation level, that shouldn't be all that difficult.
And so when we get into auditing who can do what, I'm still somewhat amazed that Microsoft hasn't provided some of what I think are basic tools they provide a facility to manage users and roles, right? You'd think they'd provide a way to back up your Active Directory environment, but apparently that's not really baked in either.
No.
So when we look at StealthBits, and I come to the problem of, like, John just did our pen test, I need to get a hold on who has access to what. Like, what does that look like? Like, walk people through the process of, at a high level, what they can expect.
The first thing they can expect is to run through our permission analyzer systems, if you would. And that's the first thing it does is literally, as the name suggests, it's going to analyze permissions.
Similar to Bloodhound, actually, right?
Quite similar, similar. And then we're going to lay out all of those things. We're going to lay out some toxic conditions where you've got, circular nesting and so forth, where, permissions are being exposed in ways that you may not have realized, and show you the effective access as well as, the direct access and those types of things. Things that as a human, when you're physically poking through AD,
sure,
they don't jump out at you.
Yeah.
You just don't see those things, especially when you've got deeply nested groups. I mean, those things just they start getting really hard to unravel. So, and that's the first thing you're going to see is we're going to lay out that entire picture for you.
Are most people surprised when they do that? I would imagine
every single time.
Yeah,
I've never had someone go, "Oh yeah, I totally expected all of that." That's never been a thing.
Right.
Never been a thing. One of the other really cool ones that we'll do too is we'll just look at access, who's using it, and then help you remodel it. Like really simple. It's like, let's get down to that least privilege state. Let's remove access from places it doesn't belong. Paul's not using it. Take it away. Why does he have it? Because the second I get Paul's credentials, even though he didn't know he had access to those things, I'm going to take it. You mentioned something on the last one too, right? You were talking about like, sometimes access gets provisioned based on the groups folks are in. So it's like, well, Paul is in the same group as Gabe is, so give him the same access. Only, Paul may have moved to this group from a different group 2 years ago, and so if you're literally just cloning your access to mine, there it is. Like all of a sudden, it's this gnarly
spread.
That's exactly it. It just pervasive throughout the environment. So,
And this is effective not just to clean up your access, but for monitoring as well, right? And we kind of joke when pen testers do their job, they're like, yep, got domain admin. But having insights as to how those credentials are used, as John mentioned, that user behavior, that's an important component as well, as not just the configuration, but the monitoring as well.
Definitely. Because there's some things that... Go ahead.
But I also was going to say, we're on the symptom side, right? Symptom side. Somebody over abuses or over prescribes permissions, we take advantage of that.
Yes.
The ability to actually go through and dynamically audit that and restrict that is something that's incredibly important that we just don't see done very often at all.
No, for sure. And we talked about this before too. Like, sure, our customers do it, but that is completely biased because, well, that's why they came to us in the first place.
They knew they had that
Absolutely.
problem.
Yeah. So, when I make the statement that, sure, these 700 people are doing it, it's an extremely biased statement. There's still thousands that have not gotten to that place where they realize they need to be performing those activities. So,
right. Well, what are some of the things that if I'm listening to this interview today and I'm like, well, I really need to get, I don't understand the problem. I don't understand the scope of the problem. Like, what are some things that I can do to help start identifying and creating a plan to make my management and other teams aware that this problem exists? Because I feel like that could be one of the things holding a lot of us back is security team definitely knows something's up with Active Directory, but now we've got a tough time convincing those other areas that this is a huge problem, the scope of the problem, right?
That's a good question. I mean, there's any number of ways. I mean, some of this is going to differ based on what your organization is more likely to listen to. I mean, if you have a red team in-house, then that's a good place to start because someone's already recognized that is a good exercise to perform and that we're going to learn things that way. If you perform pen tests, then then make sure that those things are highlighted by whoever performed those things. If you have none of those things, then start by pointing that problem out. It's like, we don't know what our problem is. We know that this problem is pervasive when we talk to all of our peers. Everyone else is experiencing these issues. We know that we've never audited Active Directory. It's been in-house now 13, 14, 15 years.
Right.
It's never once been audited. There's guaranteed to be a problem there. We better go look and see who has what. Yeah.
I see. Yeah, and there's a lot of organizations in that state, which is kind of scary.
Yeah.
Now, I got a question for you on that, and I'd love to get you guys' take on this. And Paul, you and I have talked about it before, but it seems like we're getting a greater and greater split in the community as a whole in IT. We have this really good group of organizations that are forward-leaning. They're looking at these types of problems. They're understanding the problems. They're trying to address those problems. And I just got off a call a few hours ago. I was talking with one organization that they haven't even – I mean, they were fighting over going for something greater than an 8-character password in their environment. And it just seems like there's this huge disparity in kind of security awareness in organizations as far as what the technologies are that they need to have in place, what are the things they should be doing, because they're still dealing with threats as far as their perception from 2005.
Yeah, if they are debating whether or not they should have more larger than 8-character passwords, they might be looking at this problem the wrong way. So, I mean, for starters, there's certainly no shortage of information available to us from the outside that have looked at these things. I'm just going to geek out for a second, right? But NIST 863B released in January has given us a whole lot of new guidance on what we should be doing with memorized secret verifiers. Fancy way of calling, it's a password, checker. They don't need to ask themselves that question. The question's been asked, answered, looked at 6 ways from Sunday, and they certainly can take that. They can take that advice. If there's still a split internally on how password hygiene should be handled, they can do something as basic as simply just auditing their own passwords. Take a look at them, and that's not easy to do natively. And so again, you can get some help with that. Shameless plug, sure, we can help you with that. But there's other ways you can do it. Grab a dictionary, grab John the Ripper, whatever you want to do. But audit your own passwords. Go have a look and see, where you can easily get into gain access just with passwords that have been known to have been exploited and known to have been part of breaches. There's no shortage of those you can grab. You can go out to Troy Hunt's Have I Been Pwned and pop in your organization's own emails and find that out. Or
the one I really like, Gabriel, along these lines, and we worked at a couple different organizations on the enterprise security team. There's always this hopefully short list of passwords that you're like, I know we use this password a lot. We put in a lot of effort because we got to the point where we're like, yeah, we need to change that. Every place we could think of, we went and changed it. Now, a security person in this scenario, I'm like, what are the places where we haven't changed it?
Right.
We need some kind of automated way to go find those places we haven't, because I guarantee we missed something.
Yeah,
and it's not a dictionary, it's your own internal dictionary, right?
We are equally guilty of this, right? There's a couple of passwords that we use in engineering and our sales engineers and in dev, and we don't ever want those things to show up in production. So we actually put those into one. We as I like to say, forget dog food. We drink our own champagne. We have an enterprise password enforcer where we put those passwords into that dictionary. And inside of that dictionary is also a list of a bunch of other known breach passwords. But we put our own in there and we block it, so we can't. Those will not ever show up in production. If you attempted to change a password and make it that, it will stop you from doing that.
Right.
That is definitely one of those things. And look, every organization I've ever been with would hold.
You all have those passwords, right?
Everyone
has. You have those passwords.
Personally,
organizational level has them.
Everyone has that problem for sure. Yeah. And then again, another place to just start: audit your own passwords. Like, go have a look. Where are you sharing passwords? If you can't answer that question, you might have a larger problem than you realize. Because if I find that one password and it's being used by 2, 3, 4, 5 other accounts, whether those are privileged accounts, service accounts, just even user accounts, it's going to make it easier for me to slowly get my way up to domain access.
Right.
That's a great example, though, because we all have that problem. Everyone has that problem.
I know a larger organization, we're talking tens of thousands or maybe approaching 100,000 users. How do you get a handle on who has access to what data and what's an anomaly? Right, I can think about it for our small organization. I know who should have access to what and how it should be shared, who it should be shared. How do you do that? Think about your solution in attacking this problem at a grand scale. How do you get a handle on that?
Short answer: entitlement reviews. Long answer: you are at some point going to have to engage the people that own that data, so to speak. Whether those are the custodians or the actual data owners, at some point they'll need to be part of that process. It's best when you automate as much of that as possible, so that you're not burdening them with having to understand and know all of that. But if you can perform an initial assessment of who has access to that data, the likelihood that they need to have access to that data, and start there, present that to the likely owners and or the owners that you know for sure.
Wait, what if you don't know the owners?
Oh, well, yeah,
that's a problem.
That's part of the problem. Absolutely. Then at a minimum, identify what is the data. Okay, that data looks like it might be, those are all schematics as part of our engineering department, or that's some type of intellectual property. Then you can start to figure out but identify what the data is, classify that thing so you even understand what is it, what is this data, because the IT department doesn't know what that data is. I have no idea what I'm looking at here. So,
right. Yeah, I think that's, I've always said that it's the fundamental building blocks for your security program. And I feel like we rush too quickly to a solution without understanding those fundamental principles of what data we have, the sensitivity, the classification, who should have access to it, how it should be shared. Those basic fundamental principles are not easy to do, and often just kind of skipped over still today by many organizations, even though a lot of us know better, but they're really hard things to do. Go back to our example of, I know I got this data, I don't know who owns it. Well, now we have to talk to people. God, that's the hardest part of working in security, I think. And
I have to go tell those people that they have a problem.
Yes.
And no one wants to hear that their baby's ugly.
Right.
Not at all. So the thing you do there is you don't just present the problem, you present the problem alongside the solution. And when I coach people, I tell them this all the time. Even once you find a problem, don't present it until you have at least options for a solution. No one just wants to hear that you just came with them more problems. Present the problem and then present multiple solutions. You can do this thing about it, you can do this about it, or we can do this about it. And I can help you with these 3 things. But what would you like to do? But if you just show up and you're like, hey, Paul, here's the thing. You got a data problem. It's just laying out there. It's insecure. Right. Go do something, Paul.
Yeah.
Paul's like, well, I got a day job because it's not my thing.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So present solutions with problems. That you absolutely have to. That eases that talking to people problem, and then it starts getting a lot easier. Then what you'll start to find is people start talking to you even before you go talk to them. They'll be like, "Hey, Gabe, I found another problem.
Yes,
I know you helped me. Right. You helped me last time.
Yeah.
Can you help me again this time?
Yeah.
That starts easing up so much more. Yeah,
John, amazed. do you find this, and I find this, and I'm wondering if you do as well, when you present the findings from a pen test, do you find that the struggle is often the communications problem we're talking about, that they're having a tough time effectively communicating the problem to the rest of the organization?
More often than not, we seem to be working with organizations that are very, very much on the pointy end of the spear. They're doing a very, very good job, and that's great. Talking to a lot of other firms, It is absolutely a communication problem. Periodically, we do run into scenarios where the administrators that we're working with will start testing, and they'll be like, "Hey, right over there, you want to look at that server? That one, that one? No, you dumbass, that one right there." And you find the passwords like password 1234 or something like that. And they're using us to kind of come in and do justification for a lot of the things they've already been asking for. And that works out really, really well. And also, Paul, we've been doing this a really, really long time. If I have anyone that's like, well, what are the odds of an attacker cracking my 8-character password? 100%. We do this 300 and 350 times a year. 100%. We're gonna crack that password every single time, and we're getting better at answering those questions, those hypotheticals. It's no longer hypotheticals. You know exactly what the problem is. You know exactly what the tools are to take advantage of that particular scenario, and it tends to make the conversation a lot smoother. If you've already completely destroyed their entire organization, they tend to listen a lot more. And a lot of times, the tech side of the team is using us as that hammer to drive the point home that the risk is actually real.
John said something I thought was a lot of things are interesting, but one thing I want to harp on is that pointy end of the spear are organizations that tend to be good at communicating. And I think when you're approaching this Active Directory security problem, or you're implementing something that's going to help you get a handle on your data and data governance, that communication is pivotal to an organization's success. Is that what you find as well, that you're often fostering communication?
100%. When I first kind of switched roles, so to speak, that is when I started building and developing solutions for vendors as opposed to implementing security programs as a practitioner. One of the things that for myself that I found the most useful and powerful was the ability to translate, kind of those technical to business language, items, if you would, because they don't think the way we do as practitioners and as attackers and defenders. They being, the business side of things, the folks that we're trying to get the attention to, that there are problems. And so communication is key. If we can't articulate why this is an issue, why would we expect them to understand why it's an issue? We can sit there and go all day long, it's because it's 8 characters, but why is that an issue? What problem does that present for me as a business? And if I now increase to 16 characters and I've just increased my help desk calls by 30%, that's going to cause me more money and aggravation. So tell me why that's an issue, and then help me solve the problem without creating a new problem, right? Communication is everything.
But I really think that the ability to communicate effectively starts at the very top. It seems like most of the organizations that we're working with that are that pointy end of the spear, the CEO, CFO, CIO, they are on board. Like, they want to do the right thing. They're not that generation of C-O that came up through the 80s where they're like, oh, security is just a cost center. It doesn't make us any money. We want to meet the minimum. I don't hear that from our customers. And I think that it ultimately starts at the very, very, very top of the organization. We sit down, and I've had dinner with CEOs of companies they're really genuinely interested in the state of computer security and how they can get better effectively, because they don't want to be that CEO that is on the front page of the New York Times.
That's
it just, a quick story that I was thinking of as you were talking about that was, you go to a business unit that just suffered a breach, and you're like, wow, like 8-character passwords? Like maybe they were 4-character passwords, right? They're custodians of some sensitive data. They're also critical to the business operations. They're performing a function that's critical to the business. And you can bring those people on board in varying different levels, right? Making them understand, why that's important. But a lot of times they don't have the resources they need to be able to move to that more secure state. And as John pointed out, that that starts at the top. Someone at the top that you can say, look, like I can try and help these people as much as I can and bring them around, but at the end of the day, like, they need more resources. That could be software, hardware, people, processes, training, whatever that is. You're like, they need more. And it's only someone at the top that can say, oh yes, I recognize that as a problem. They need more resources.
I would build on that and say sometimes we have to get creative with that problem solving, because instead of always just throwing more resources at it, sometimes we simply need to remove things from the environment, right? And that's an inexpensive way of securing the environment. Reduce the attacker platform, right? Reduce the actual the attack surface there.
We did that. I'm speaking from university, was where I encountered that, and a lot of universities do the same kind of cost modeling, right? They're like, well, department can do it independently, or we can bring it in centrally, and they're constantly managing that balance. But like you said, Gabriel, a lot of times it makes more sense to pull it in centrally and have a more unified way to deal with multiple departments that might have similar problems.
And some of it's just crazy. Like you talk about removing things from the environment. This is like 3-4 years ago, maybe longer. We had a file upload vulnerability that was a Cold Fusion file upload vulnerability, and it was a specific version of Cold Fusion. And the customer started freaking out. They're like, "Oh my God! If we update, it breaks our software. What are we gonna do? How do we restrict access to this?" And they're running around, oh no! Finally, we just asked them, "Do you guys actually need the file upload capability?" And they're like, "Well, no, we don't."
Turn it off.
How about we just, maybe shut that off?
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, well, that seems like an easy solution." They were always looking for the patch. They were always looking for the thing that they were expected to implement. Run an update and it fixes it. And it was just something as simple as just shutting off an unnecessary service.
Yeah. The same is true in the data side of the house, right? It's like, oh my God, we have all of this sensitive data sitting out here. Well, how much of that do you actually need to perform any of your business operations? Well, we haven't touched that data in 7 years.
Right.
Maybe you don't need to have it sitting out there then. Maybe you archive it. Maybe you delete it. And those are inexpensive ways. You don't have to throw more resources at them. You don't have to buy more. So you just simply clean up stale data. Get rid of it. Why is it there? File upload features. You're not using it? Turn it off.
I actually think the GDPR is kind of forced us to think about that a lot harder, right? Even some of the data that we collect, we said, well, we only need that for 180 days. And I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, because we're like, next year we're going to do a new survey or something like that. And that old data is old data. It's not useful to us. So let's just get rid of it. And I think it's kind of forced, that regulation specifically has forced us to think in that way.
Explicitly forces, because you have to be able to justify how you're using that data, right? Like GDPR explicitly says that, you need to be able to explain why this data is necessary for what business function. Like you have to be able to explicitly say it, and if you can't, then that's a good thing. Then get rid of it.
Right.
Get rid of it, because it will be useful to an attacker. That's for sure.
Now, Gabriel, do you have tools that are available to our audience? Should they schedule a demo, or do you have some like assessment tools or things that can help people, get ready if they've listened to this interview and they're like, I want to go do something? Like, what do they do?
Definitely all of the above. So first and foremost, we've got unfettered free trials to pretty much everything that all the solutions we have. So you can visit the website, hit the free trials page. There's a permission analyzer there that you can grab. There's a file activity monitor you can grab. There's a change in access monitoring that you can grab. Those are all you can grab free. Awesome trials of those all day long. A demo is certainly a great place because we offer a wide range of solutions, right? Everything from discovery and classification to data access governance to threat analytics, and in the form of a machine learning solution and password enforcer, like we were talking about. Oh my God, it's probably one of the most impactful and simplest solutions that we offer to date is simply the ability to both audit those passwords and enforce better password hygiene. So definitely reach out. You can find us online at the website. You can hit us up on Twitter. Any number of ways that you can get a hold of us, but definitely check out the free trials, schedule a demo. Happy to walk you guys through stuff. The blog's probably one of the best places you can go. So between myself, Jonathan Sanders, and Jeff Warren, there's a whole range of topics on Active Directory security, how to actually recreate these things, how to to actually do them yourself, so you can see if you have these problems using all the free tools out there. The Mimikatz, the Bloodhounds, etc. The blog might be one of the best places that folks that were just looking to start. Absolutely.
See what's interesting to you, and then maybe go find a free tool and try it out. I like that. Sure. Our audience is very hands-on, so that's awesome.
They'll love the blog then, because it gets real dirty in the technical side of things. So,
that's awesome. Awesome. Well, Gabriel, thank you so much. With that, we are going to take a short break, come back with the enterprise news. Stay tuned.